The mansion rang with screams as Eliza Morgan fell to her knees, shards of glass glinting around her, and 4 terrified black children huddled nearby. Blood pooled beneath her white designer dress. Outside, sirens wailed through the night. How had a simple act of charity led to violence and betrayal? Before we unravel this shocking story, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe as we follow Eliza's transformation. From a life of wealth and isolation to a discovery that challenges everything we think we know about class, race, and the meaning of helping others. Just days before, Eliza had stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of her sleek Silicon Valley home, barely recognizing the hollow-eyed reflection staring back. At 38, she had it all: a $20 billion medical AI empire, magazine-worthy architecture, and a closet overflowing with luxury. And yet, she felt nothing. 3 months had passed since her mother died of pancreatic cancer, whispering her final words. "There's a whole world beyond your bubble, Eliza. Promise me you'll see it." Their relationship had always been strained. Rebecca Morgan, a single mother, had pushed Eliza towards success with cold detachment, raising her to be independent, but guarded. As a child, Eliza remembered the subtle signals: her mother locking the car doors in black neighborhoods, the tight-lipped smiles at school functions when speaking to non-white parents. These quiet biases, masked as meritocracy and colorblind values, had seeped into Eliza's worldview without her ever realizing it. Now, her company was planning a new research facility in Pinewood, a struggling rural town ravaged by economic collapse. The board hailed it as a PR win. Billionaire savior revives forgotten America. Eliza saw it as just another business trip. She didn't expect to engage with the town, especially one that was 40% black and largely impoverished. Her assistant booked the only decent hotel to limit contact with the community. When Eliza arrived by private jet, the drive through Pinewood revealed boarded windows, potholed streets, and shuttered shops. On impulse, she told her driver to stop so she could walk alone through the downtown. Her crisp white pantsuit and designer shoes stood out as locals, mostly black and Latino, watched her with open curiosity. She clutched her purse tighter without realizing it. Then, she bumped into a young black boy. His box of handcrafted figurines spilled onto the sidewalk, one cracking as it hit the ground. "I'm so sorry," Eliza said automatically. The boy, about 13, wore oversized, second-hand clothes. His eyes, sharp and knowing, met hers. "It's fine," he muttered, kneeling to pick up his things. "I'll pay for the damage," she offered, pulling out cash. "No thanks," he replied flatly. "I can fix it." Eliza was stunned. No one refused her money. "They're not for sale to people like you," the boy added. "These are cultural pieces, not souvenirs." That phrase, "people like you," hit her harder than expected. She introduced herself. "Eliza." "Marcus," he replied, wary but polite. They walked together. Eliza learned he carved each item by hand his father taught him before he died. As they moved through Pinewood, Eliza watched the subtle daily unfold. A store owner watched Marcus like a thief. A cop demanded to inspect his belongings. White kids shoplifted with impunity while Marcus was scrutinized. "You get used to it," Marcus said quietly. "Been this way forever." They stopped at a small, aging library where Marcus dropped off a carved bookmark. Eliza wandered inside and overheard him discussing neural network algorithms with the librarian. "Wait," she interrupted, stunned. "How do you know about neural networks?" "Internet," he said, looking away. "Libraries got free Wi-Fi." The librarian smiled. "Marcus is a genius. Taught himself coding at 9. Now he teaches others." Eliza was floored. This boy understood medical AI, her field. "My company develops diagnostic algorithms," she said. "Like the cancer detector?" Marcus asked. suddenly animated. The one using reinforcement learning to increase accuracy. His knowledge impressed her. How do you know so much about my work? School project, he said quickly, retreating again. As they continued walking, the neighborhood grew rougher. Marcus's eyes scanned constantly. When a police car rolled past, he quietly changed direction. The officer slowed, watching them, until they turned the corner. They give you trouble often? Eliza asked. Marcus scoffed. Lady, you don't know what trouble means for kids like me. People watched from porches. Some nodded to Marcus. Others eyed Eliza with distrust. You're making people nervous, Marcus said. White folks in expensive clothes don't come here unless they're selling something, buying something illegal, or bringing bad news. Eliza felt the sting of truth. I'm just interested in the town, she said weakly. Right, Marcus replied. Interested in revitalizing it till rents go up and we get pushed out. Suddenly, the neighborhood seemed too good for the very people who had always called it home. Marcus's understanding of gentrification caught Eliza off guard. They reached an area where homes gave way to deserted industrial buildings, and Marcus quickened his pace. Look, I appreciate the company, he said, but I've got things to handle on my own. Eliza should have turned back. In her usual life, she would have. But something, a spark of curiosity, her mother's last words, or perhaps something deeper kept her moving forward at a distance. She watched as Marcus nervously glanced over his shoulder before slipping through a gap in a chain-link fence, around what looked like an abandoned warehouse. She waited a few minutes before approaching the fence, questioning herself. What was she doing, following a child through a dangerous neighborhood? But she couldn't shake the sense that Marcus's story mattered to the town, and maybe to her. She found a hole in the fence and squeezed through, her designer clothes catching and tearing on the rusted metal. The warehouse loomed ahead, its windows shattered or boarded up, its walls covered in graffiti. Any sensible person would have turned around, called the police, or waited for daylight. But Eliza Morgan, who had built an empire by trusting her instincts, did none of those things. Instead, she followed the faint sound of voices to a side door hanging crooked on its hinges and stepped into the shadows of a world far removed from her own. Faint afternoon light streamed through the broken windows, illuminating dust particles dancing in the air. As her eyes adjusted, Eliza saw a large space divided by makeshift walls of plywood, cardboard, and hanging sheets. The concrete floor, despite the building's ruin, was swept clean. From somewhere deeper inside, she heard hushed voices, following the sound. She stepped carefully, the click of her heels echoing as she rounded a partition and froze. Marcus knelt on the floor, surrounded by 3 younger children, a girl around 10, a boy of about 8, and a tiny girl no older than 5. They sat huddled around a small camping stove as Marcus heated a single can of beans, carefully dividing its contents among 4 chipped plates with startling precision. The youngest girl noticed Eliza first, her eyes going wide. Marcus, she whispered urgently. Marcus turned, immediately stepping in front of the children. His expression was a mix of fear and fury. You followed me. How dare you? These are my siblings. What now? You gonna call social services? Get us split up again? Or was this just your field trip to the other side of town? Eliza couldn't speak. She was frozen, staring at what Marcus had called home. The space behind him had 4 mattresses laid neatly on the floor, each with folded blankets. A plastic bin served as a dresser, and water bottles were stacked in a corner. A lidded bucket Eliza realized with horror was their bathroom. Backpacks hung from nails in a beam, and books sat on a makeshift shelf made of planks and cinder blocks. It was poverty she had never imagined, arranged with quiet dignity. Who are these children? Elisa finally asked, her voice barely audible. The oldest girl stepped forward, chin lifted with defiance despite her obvious malnutrition. I'm Zoe. That's Jaden and Lily. We're the Wilsons, and you're trespassing. Eliza slowly knelt, trying to meet them at eye level. Why are you living here? Where are your parents? Lily, the youngest, began to cry. Jaden pulled her close. Glaring at Eliza, Marcus let out a sigh that carried the weight of adulthood no child should bear. Our parents worked at the Edison plant. 2 years ago, there was an accident. Equipment failed. Dad died instantly. Mom lasted 3 days in the hospital. His tone was matter-of-fact, but the pain underneath was clear. The company denied responsibility. No settlement. No help. He gestured around him. This is what happens when you're black and from Pinewood, and no one fights for you. Eliza felt a sickness in her gut. But surely there's family, or social services. Marcus cut her off. They split us in 2, for foster homes in 3 counties. No one wanted all 4 of us. They didn't want us at all, especially the boys. Said we were difficult to place. He mimed air quotes around the phrase code for racism. I ran away after 3 months. Took me 6 weeks to find Zoe, another month to get Jaden. Lily was the hardest. They'd moved her twice. Zoe picked up where he left off. We went back to social services, begged to stay together. Our caseworker, a white lady with photos of her kids on her desks, said it was unfortunate but impossible. Said we should be grateful for any placement. So we made our own home. Marcus nodded. Been here 8 months. I do odd jobs, sell carvings. Zoe babysits when someone will let her. We dumpster dive. The librarian lets us use the bathroom. We get by. Eliza looked again at their dinner. The meager beans split into 4 and something inside her broke. This is America, she whispered. How is this happening here? What do you think? 1. Society abandoned the Wilson children. 2. Marcus should have trusted the system. But the real question is, what would you do if you found 4 children living like this? Walk away? Call the authorities? Or take action? You can't stay here, Eliza said suddenly. Not realizing she'd spoken aloud, 4 pairs of eyes locked on her, wary. We're not going back into the system, Marcus said firmly. Eliza shook her head. No, I mean you can come with me. To my hotel. Just for tonight. Hot showers, real beds, room service. The offer hung in the air, both absurd and deeply human. Marcus looked to Zoe. A silent conversation passed between them. Why would you help us? Zoe asked, echoing the unspoken suspicion. Eliza had no immediate answer. Was it guilt? Curiosity? Her mother's final words. Finally, she said, because what happened to you is wrong, and I can help, at least for now. After some discussion, and Marcus insisting they pack in case they needed to flee, the 5 of them walked toward the center of town. Eliza felt exposed, moving through the streets with 4 ragged children carrying everything they owned in plastic bags and worn backpacks. At the Pinewood, grand only by local standards. Eliza approached the front desk with her usual confidence. I'd like a 2-bedroom suite, please. The receptionist smiled until she noticed the children. Her smile vanished. I'm sorry, Miss Morgan, she said quietly. We have a strict policy about unaccompanied minors. Liability concerns. Eliza blinked. They're with me. I'm with them, Eliza said. The woman's lips tightened. Perhaps I wasn't clear. We serve a particular clientele. These children would make our other guests uncomfortable. The meaning was unmistakable. Eliza felt her face flush with anger. They have names, she shot back. Marcus, Zoe, Jaden, and Lily Wilson. And they're my guests. A manager appeared, summoned by some unspoken signal. Is there a problem, Claire? He asked. The receptionist didn't hesitate. Ms. Morgan wants to bring these children in, her tone implying that age wasn't the issue. The manager, a balding white man with a brittle smile, turned to Eliza. Perhaps the motel on Highway 7 would be more suitable for your situation. For the first time in her privileged life, Eliza Morgan ran into a barrier her wealth couldn't instantly dissolve. She recognized it at once. Not overt, violent racism, but the quiet, insidious kind, dressed in policy and preference. The same system she'd unknowingly benefited from her whole life. "I've booked your presidential suite for the week," she said icily. "Either you honor that reservation with all my guests, or my legal team will be explaining federal discrimination laws to you first thing tomorrow." The threat of lawyers, or maybe the growing scene in the lobby, accomplished what decency hadn't. 20 minutes later, they entered a suite larger than the warehouse the kids had once called home. Lily darted to the bathroom, marveling at the gleaming fixtures. "Look, the water's hot," she exclaimed, turning the tap in wonder. Jaden tested the softness of the bed, his face lighting up as though he'd stumbled onto a miracle. Zoe hovered awkwardly in the living room, lost amid the luxury. Only Marcus stayed near the door, scanning for exits. "You can shower if you want," Eliza offered. "I'll order food." That word, food, broke through even Marcus's wary silence. Within the hour, the coffee table was littered with empty plates from burgers, fries, chicken tenders, and more vegetables than they'd seen in months. Lily fell asleep mid-bite, exhaustion finally overtaking her now that her belly was full, as Eliza tucked the small girl into bed. She felt an unexpected tightness in her chest. She brushed Lily's hair from her face with a tenderness she hadn't realized she was capable of. Later, she found Marcus staring out the window. "This isn't permanent," he said without turning. "I know you think you're helping, but sooner or later you'll decide we're not your problem. You'll call social services, feel good about it, and go back to your life, and we'll be split up again." His words stung, mostly because she wasn't entirely sure he was wrong. She'd acted on impulse, not something the calculated businesswoman typically did. "I'll call my lawyer in the morning," she said. "There has to be a way to keep you together legally." Marcus turned, his eyes too old for his 13 years. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you care?" The question stripped away every excuse. Why did she care? These children were strangers. Their lives were so far removed from hers, they might as well have lived on different planets. Yet something, in their resilience, their fierce loyalty, and their quiet dignity in the face of injustice, had awakened something in her. "My mother died recently," she admitted. "Her last words to me were to see beyond my bubble, I think." Maybe this is what she meant. It sounded inadequate, even to her. But Marcus gave a slow nod. "I'm sorry about your mom," he said softly. "Losing parents changes everything." In that moment, a small but real connection formed between a billionaire and a boy who had learned to trust no one. The next morning brought new complications. Her lawyer, summoned via video call, outlined the legal tangle they faced. "Technically, these kids are wards of the state who've fled their placements," he explained. "If you alert authorities, they'll be returned to the system." He hesitated. "But if you're serious about helping them, we can petition for temporary guardianship while we work toward a permanent solution. It won't be easy. It would mean background checks, home studies, and wrestling a system inherently biased against placing black children with a single wealthy white woman with no parenting experience." Eliza also called the local school district. The administrator's answer spoke volumes. "Without proof of residence and legal guardianship, I'm afraid we can't enroll these students." The pause before students said everything. Her wealth and threats of media attention got things moving, but each encounter exposed deeper rot within the system. The children adjusted in their own ways. Lily clung to Eliza, her young heart still open to kindness. Jaden stayed cautiously hopeful, testing boundaries while relishing steady meals and warm beds. Zoe wavered between gratitude and distrust, accepting help but holding on to her independence. And Marcus kept watch, constantly assessing Eliza's motives, waiting for the inevitable betrayal. Eliza delayed her return to California, giving vague excuses to her frustrated executive team. The truth was, For the first time in years, she faced a challenge her money couldn't instantly fix, and she found she didn't want to leave. After 10 days, a routine formed. Mornings meant homework. Afternoons brought battles with bureaucracy. Evenings were for reading stories to Lily. The pristine suite grew cluttered with toys, clothes, and drawings, a stark contrast to Eliza's minimalist home. She learned their personalities, Lily's irrepressible joy, Jaden's sharp curiosity, Zoe's talent for art that captured both beauty and pain, and Marcus's extraordinary knack for technology, which she encouraged with borrowed laptops and online classes. The high-powered executive who once scheduled her bathroom breaks was now playing sock basketball in a hotel suite, laughing in ways she hadn't for years. Small moments piled up, teaching Zoe to French braid, explaining algorithms to Marcus, watching Jaden's face glow when he finally grasped fractions, receiving a crayon drawing from Lily, labeled "My New Family." But there were harder lessons too. On a shopping trip for clothes, their first new ones in years, security trailed them. At the ice cream shop, only Eliza was spoken to. At the park, a white mother yanked her children away with a whispered warning. Eliza began to see her country for what it was, not a meritocracy, but a world where skin color dictated opportunity and treatment, no matter one's heart or intelligence. Her guardianship petition advanced, but obstacles remained. Former foster families described Marcus as trouble, and Jaden as hyperactive, instead of intellectually curious. Zoe was called withdrawn, rather than traumatized. Only Lily was spared criticism, fitting the mold of the adorable black child white families found acceptable. Their assigned social worker, a middle-aged white woman, met Eliza with thinly veiled suspicion. "What's your real interest here, Miss Morgan? A tax write-off community service points? I've seen rich people collect disadvantaged kids before, and it never ends well for the children." The words cut deep, because even Eliza couldn't fully explain her motivations. She only knew the thought of abandoning these kids now was unbearable. "They deserve to stay together," she answered, "and I have the resources to make that happen." The social worker's gaze stayed cold. "Resources aren't everything. These children have faced trauma and racism you'll never fully grasp. Are you ready to help a black teen handle a police stop? Explain why a store clerk follows him? Deal with teachers who assume he's a problem?" Those questions haunted Eliza late into the night. Was she arrogant to believe she could do this? Could good intentions cause more harm? One evening, Lily crawled into her lap and traced Eliza's furrowed brow. "Are you sad?" the little girl asked. "A little," Eliza admitted. "I'm trying to figure out some grown-up problems." "Grown-ups make everything complicated," Marcus once said. Maybe he was right, Eliza thought. These children needed a home. She had one. The rest could be figured out together. As the legal process moved forward, Eliza explored Pinewood. What she found was a racially and economically divided town, white families in the stable East, black and Latino families struggling in the West. Her investigation into the Edison plant, where the Wilson parents died, revealed a history of safety violations and negligence issues, brushed aside because most victims were minorities. When she confronted Mayor Whitfield about inequality and the plant's role in the Wilsons' deaths, his warm demeanor turned cold. He warned her to stay out of local matters or risk delays in her company's development plans. Disturbed, Eliza began reviewing documents Vincent, her CFO, had previously summarized. What she found horrified her. The new facility would displace black residents through eminent domain, underpay them, and pollute their neighborhoods. Emails revealed collusion between Vincent and the mayor to suppress opposition. Her company wasn't just complicit, it was leading the harm. Confronting Vincent, she was met with indifference. "It's efficient," he said. He mocked her care for the Wilson kids as a white savior stunt and warned the board was planning to remove her. Moments later, Marcus overheard, "Your company's kicking black families out," he said. Betrayed. Zoe cried. Lily clung to her leg. We trusted you, they said. And then they left. Alone in the hotel suite, Eliza faced the truth. Her wealth had come at the cost of others' suffering. She had a choice: return to California and protect her empire, or stay and fight for these kids. She chose the latter. Rain poured as Eliza searched for them. On the east side, people dismissed her. On the west, she met skepticism. Why should we help a rich white woman? One man asked. Exhausted, she returned to the abandoned warehouse where she'd first found them, but it was locked. As she turned to leave, an elderly man stepped from the shadows. You looking for the Wilson kids? He asked. He introduced himself as Walter Johnson, a longtime friend of their family. He'd seen the news. Is it true your company's displacing black folks? Yes, Eliza admitted, but I didn't know, and I want to make it right. Walter was cautious, but pointed her to a service tunnel under an old paper mill where kids sometimes hid. Before she left, he warned, don't make promises you can't keep. As she entered the dark, damp tunnel, Eliza called out, her voice echoing Marcus, Zoe, Jaden, Lily, please, I just want to talk. Only silence answered. A beam of light caught on something familiar, Lily's stuffed rabbit, left behind on the ground. Fear gripped Eliza's chest as she picked up her pace, calling out with more urgency. But a sound made her stop, muffled voices and footsteps. Not the children's. From a side tunnel, 3 men emerged, their expressions predatory. Well, sneered the leader, a burly white man with a private security logo on his jacket. Look what we've got here. The billionaire lady herself. Eliza instinctively stepped back. I'm just looking for the Wilson children. Funny coincidence, the man said, moving closer. So are we. Mayor Whitfield wants them found before they ruin the town's good name. There's a nice reward on offer. The implication chilled Eliza even more than the damp air. They're kids, not criminals, she protested. Their problems, another man corrected, spreading lies about that so-called accident at the Edison plant. The mayor figured you'd lead us right to them. Thanks for the assist. Eliza's thoughts raced. These weren't ordinary security guards, they were enforcers, sent to erase witnesses, children included. It wasn't their fault, she argued. Their parents died because of corporate negligence. Their parents died because accidents happen in factories, the leader snapped. That story was closed years ago until you started digging. Now the kids are stirring up trouble, and you're backing them with your influence. That's bad for business. She backed into a wall, cornered. People deserve the truth, Eliza said. The man laughed coldly. Truth. This town depends on companies like yours, and troublemakers. They get handled. The mayor was clear either. The kids shut up, or they vanish into foster care so deep not even your money can pull them out. As they closed in, Eliza saw it all with terrifying clarity. This wasn't just local corruption. It was the machinery of systemic oppression at work, the kind that casually treated black children as disposable, threats to be silenced to protect white wealth. It was the same machine that had torn the Wilsons apart, leaving them homeless. And through ignorance and privilege, she'd helped sustain it. Something inside her, snapped Eliza. Morgan, the tech mogul, who built her empire on caution and compromise, abandoned both in a heartbeat. She lunged at the leader, catching him off guard. Run, Marcus. Run, she screamed. A scuffle broke out in the shadows. The kids had been nearby, hiding. The man cursed and slammed Eliza against the wall. Grab the kids, he barked. Eliza drove her knee into his gut and shoved past him, sprinting toward the fleeing children. This way, she shouted, spotting Marcus dragging Lily, with Zoe and Jaden close behind. At a tunnel fork, they hesitated. Trust me, Eliza urged, pointing left. Please. Marcus gave a brief nod. Together, they bolted through the winding passage. Angry shouts and beams of light chased them until they burst out into the rainy night. There, Eliza gasped, pointing to her car parked nearby. They piled in, soaked and shaking. She drove off, taking erratic turns to avoid pursuit. Eventually, they pulled into a highway diner outside town. Inside, the children sat silently, trying to process it all. Lily climbed into Eliza's lap, burying her face in her shoulder. "Those bad men wanted to hurt us," she whispered. "Why?" Holding her tightly, Eliza looked at Marcus. "Because they fear the truth," she said. "And because they think no one will stop them." Marcus met her gaze, conflicted, but acknowledging. "You came for us. You took a risk." "It was a promise," Eliza replied, "and I meant it. My company, my reputation, that can be rebuilt. But trust, that's harder." I didn't know what Morgan Medical was doing in Pinewood, but not knowing is no excuse. I should have known. And now that I do, I won't be part of it anymore. Whatever happens, I'm with you. In the stark light of the empty diner, surrounded by 4 exhausted children, Eliza made a vow to herself and to them. The systems that had failed the Wilsons would face a new kind of opponent. One who understood what was truly at stake and had the resources to fight back. The next morning found them holed up in a motel, 30 miles from Pinewood, paying in cash to avoid leaving a trail. At a small table, Eliza typed furiously on her laptop while the kids watched, anxious and curious. "What are you doing?" Marcus finally asked, leaning in to see code and documents scrolling across her screen. "Gathering evidence," Eliza replied, "and securing our position." She hacked into Morgan Medical's secure servers using old backdoors she had once built and never deactivated. As its founder, she knew exactly where to look for buried information and how to find it without triggering alarms. "Is that even legal?" Zoe asked, worried. Eliza paused. "Technically, it's a gray area, but ethically, it's justified." She kept working, explaining as she typed. What happened to the Wilsons' parents wasn't isolated, nor were the development plans in Pinewood. They were part of a long pattern, documented strategies of exploitation and discrimination, normalized by powerful people. Elisa unearthed internal emails targeting minority neighborhoods for displacement, doctored safety reports from the Edison plant, and communications between Mayor Whitfield and corporations, discussing how to restrict economic opportunities for black residents. Most chilling were plans to silence whistleblowers' plans, now targeting the Wilson children. By mid-afternoon, she had assembled a damning digital archive. "This," she told the kids, showing them select documents, "is how structural racism works. Not just individual bias, entire systems designed to keep inequality in place." Marcus studied the files. "People need to see this. But who'd believe us? We're just kids. And you're a billionaire who suddenly flipped sides." Eliza gave a tired smile. "You're right. We need protection and credibility." She made 3 calls first, to Amara Washington, a top civil rights attorney, then to Darius Reynolds, an investigative journalist, and finally to Daniel Chin, a board member and longtime friend. Each call meant humbling herself, asking for help not as a billionaire, but as someone doing the right thing. By evening, the motel room had transformed into Command Central for what Amara dubbed Operation Sunlight. Reviewing the evidence, Amara was impressed and disturbed. "This could spark multiple federal investigations," she said. "I'm ready," Eliza replied. Darius arrived with urgent news. The media was portraying Eliza as mentally unstable, and the board was preparing to remove her as CEO. Worse, Pinewood authorities had filed for emergency custody of the Wilson children, accusing her of kidnapping. "They can't take us," Zoe cried, panicking. "No one's taking you," Amara assured calmly. "We're filing for federal protection, but we must act fast." The night became a blur: legal filings, press strategy, and war room planning. Lily fell asleep in Eliza's lap as they worked. Eliza stared down at her, overwhelmed by a fierce, maternal protectiveness. This wasn't about guilt anymore. These kids were her family now. Daniel arrived just before midnight. The board vote is locked. Vincent's been planning it for months. He's studied her closely. But you've got allies. Not everyone at Morgan Medical is corrupt. Some are just like you, were blind. His words hit hard. How many decent people stayed silent because speaking up felt impossible? She had been one of them. But no more. By morning, their plan was clear. They wouldn't run. They'd fight. Elisa transferred personal funds to accounts outside the board's reach, authorizing Amara to use them for legal action and community aid. Darius prepared a simultaneous media blitz. Daniel rallied ethical investors for a company overhaul. And the children, they would share their story, not as victims, but witnesses to injustice and strength. Then the confrontation arrived, as they prepared to leave. Police cruisers boxed in the motel. Eliza spotted Mayor Whitfield and Vincent Blackwell outside. "Found us," Marcus muttered. "Yes," Eliza said calmly. "But we're ready." She gathered the children. "Stay with Amara. Speak your truth. Trust what we've built." Then, with shoulders squared, she stepped outside to face them children at her side. Cameras rolling, and the truth finally on their heels. "I've been given full authority to oversee company operations and ensure you receive the support you so clearly require," Eliza said, her tone calm but firm. Their conduct had been impeccable on the surface. Their concern would have seemed genuine to anyone who hadn't seen what was hidden behind the scenes. But Eliza smiled now, not her usual, polished corporate expression, but something unguarded and real. "Gentlemen," she said coolly, "I'm perfectly fine, and I believe the federal agents would like a word with both of you." Right on cue, a convoy of government vehicles rolled into the motel parking lot. FBI agents stepped out, accompanied by representatives from the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. What had been a carefully staged confrontation quickly turned chaotic as agents served warrants and secured evidence. Amara stepped forward and addressed the group confidently. "I represent both Eliza Morgan and the Wilson children. My clients are prepared to give full statements regarding the Edison manufacturing accident cover-up, the systemic discrimination in Pinewood's housing and education sectors, and the conspiracy to silence witnesses, including minor children." The color drained from the mayor's face. Vincent tried to launch into a denial, but the words faltered as Darius approached, a digital recorder in hand. "Mr. Blackwell," he said, "would you care to comment on these emails, where you discuss displacing black neighborhoods, or your conversation with Mayor Whitfield about managing the Wilson children?" In that moment, as the balance of power visibly shifted, Eliza felt Marcus slip his hand into hers. She looked down, surprised to see all 4 Wilson children beside her, standing tall and united. They had endured the worst of humanity's rigged against them, cruelty disguised as policy, and yet they stood unbroken. Their courage moved her. Their resilience gave her strength, and their unwavering stance. Eliza Morgan found the resolve to face the unraveling of her old life with dignity. She understood now that what would come next would be far more meaningful. 6 months later, Eliza stood at the edge of a construction site, watching workers raise steel beams that would soon become the Pinewood Community Innovation Center. Marcus, animated and focused, pointed at architectural plans laid out on a nearby table. "The coding lab will have 30 workstations and high-performance servers for machine learning," he explained to a group of teenagers. At just 13, he had become a de facto spokesperson for the center, his leadership blossoming with the right encouragement. The road to this moment had been long and difficult. The evidence they had provided triggered sweeping federal investigations that rocked Pinewood. Mayor Whitfield faced numerous indictments: corruption, civil rights violations, conspiracy. Vincent and several Morgan medical executives awaited trial for corporate malfeasance. Edison Manufacturing had agreed to a substantial settlement, compensating former employees and the Wilson children for their parents' deaths. Eliza herself hadn't escaped unscathed. She was removed as CEO of Morgan Medical Technologies, though she retained significant ownership. The company's stock initially crashed during the scandal, but had begun to recover under new, ethically driven leadership. Her reputation in corporate circles was irreparably changed. Some called her a traitor to her class. Others, a late-blooming advocate for justice. She lost business allies, social status, and the simplistic success narrative that once defined her. And yet, as she watched Zoe lead an art therapy session for local kids, Eliza knew she had no regrets. "Ms. Morgan," came a familiar voice. She turned to see Walter Johnson, the man who had helped her find the children that stormy night. "The Community Council has reviewed your proposal," he said. "We've agreed to the partnership under the terms discussed." Eliza smiled, genuinely pleased. "That's wonderful news, Mr. Johnson. And please just Eliza." The Pinewood Community Restoration Project had been designed to empower local residents, especially those from historically marginalized backgrounds. Eliza offered financial and technical support through her foundation, but every major decision required approval from an elected community council. It was the opposite of the top-down model her company had once used, and it honored the dignity of those it aimed to serve. Across the site, Jaden eagerly explained the solar panel system to visiting guests. At 9, his intense curiosity thrived in a supportive environment. What had once been labeled hyperactivity was now recognized as the energetic drive of a gifted child, finally engaged. Nearby, 6-year-old Lily skipped beside Martha Jenkins, an older woman who had become a surrogate grandmother to the children. Lily's playful spirit, once dampened by the fear of survival, now shone freely. "Eliza," she called out. "Miss Martha says I can help with the community garden tomorrow." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Eliza replied, smiling at Martha Na, both a friend and a guide in Eliza's journey raising black children in America. 3 months earlier, the adoption had been finalized. After thorough home evaluations and cultural competency training, the judge determined that Eliza's unwavering commitment to the children's cultural identity and community bonds made her a fit guardian, despite the interracial nature of the adoption. Their home now stood on what had once been the Edison Planta, site of sorrow, transformed into one of hope. Each child had their own room, surrounded by Zoe's art and photos of their late parents, their presence still a guiding light. Eliza had chosen to make Pinewood her permanent home. This wasn't charity from a distance. This was her life now entwined with a community that continually taught and transformed her. Later, she spoke with Darius Reynolds, the journalist whose coverage had helped bring national attention to Pinewood. "You know what fascinates me about this story?" he asked, watching residents gather for planning meetings. "A year ago, this town was collapsing, economically divided, racially segregated, stuck in decades-old cycles. Now it's becoming a model for ethical development and healing." Eliza nodded. "This is what happens when people who've been silenced finally get heard. Everything you see, hear, the knowledge, the vision, the skillet, was always present. What was missing was the power to act on it." As evening settled, Eliza gathered the kids to head home. Marcus lingered, discussing technical specs for the technology wing that would bear his parents' names. His talent in design and programming had earned him genuine respect among the professionals. "Mom," Lily called from the car, impatient. Eliza turned, smiling. "I'm hungry." The words still caught Elisa off guard sometimes. She wasn't their mother, not a replacement for the woman they had lost, but something new had grown between them. A bond built on shared moments, mutual respect, and an unexpected, fierce kind of love. As their car moved through Pinewood, the changes in the town were undeniable. Once forgotten storefronts now gleamed with fresh paint and promise. Parks echoed with children's laughter, newly equipped with swings and slides. Community gardens blossomed in lots that once sat vacant. The journey was far from over, but the direction had clearly shifted. At home, Eliza and the children prepared dinner, together, a ritual that had become sacred. Just as she was slicing vegetables, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Rebecca Morgan, her mother's lawyer. Eliza, the attorney began formally. While reviewing your mother's estate, we found documents she intended for you, but only under specific conditions. She asked that they be shared only if you became personally involved with Pinewood. To be honest, we never thought that day would come. 2 days later, Eliza sat in a quiet conference room as a weathered envelope was slid across the table. Inside were a birth certificate, faded newspaper clippings, and a handwritten letter. The certificate listed a name she'd never seen: Rebecca Jefferson, born in Pinewood County Hospital 68 years earlier. The clippings detailed the story of a young black woman earning a college scholarship to California in the 1970s. Then the letter. In her mother's unmistakable handwriting, it began: My dearest Eliza, if you're reading this, then you found your way back to Pinewood, the town I ran from at 18. It's where your grandparents worked in the paper mill until it shut down, and where I learned what it meant to be visibly black in America, the limits I refused to live under. The revelation hit like a tidal wave. Her mother, poised, driven, obsessed with image, had been born black in Pinewood. She had lightened, her skin straightened, her hair, changed her name, and buried her past to build a new identity in California. She had cut all ties to her roots, to her family, to the truth. That night, Eliza shared the revelation with the Wilson children. She passed, Marcus said softly. A lot of folks did that back then. Some still do. Suddenly, so many pieces fell into place: her mother's emotional distance, her fixation on appearances, the subtle but persistent racism. It was all part of the mask Rebecca had worn to survive in a world that wouldn't have accepted her otherwise. Her cryptic final words, "See beyond your bubble," took on a deeper meaning. She hadn't just been encouraging Eliza to understand the world. She'd been urging her daughter to reclaim a history she herself had buried. As summer faded into fall, the Pinewood Community Innovation Center neared completion. The town became a living model of ethical community-first development, drawing in researchers, policymakers, and educators from across the country. The Wilson children thrived. Marcus was designing mobile apps to connect underserved communities with education tools. Zoe's vivid artwork toured in an exhibition about childhood resilience. Jaden won regional science fairs. And Lily, perhaps the most remarkable of all, simply got to be a child again, safe and smiling. Eliza had found fulfillment in the last place she'd expected. No longer the untouchable executive, she now taught business ethics at the local college, mentored entrepreneurs, and steered her foundation's efforts according to community input, not corporate profit. Her wealth, though much reduced, finally had purpose. 1 year to the day since she first met Marcus, they walked side by side through a Pinewood reborn. "Do you ever miss your old life?" he asked. "The mansions, the jets, the power." Eliza thought for a moment. "I miss the simplicity sometimes," she admitted, "when everything felt black and white, because I was too privileged to see the gray. But the truth, I don't miss the emptiness. I don't miss the loneliness that came with success." She looked at Marcus, the boy who had challenged her with quiet truth and changed the course of her life. "My mother spent her whole life running from Pinewood. She died with her secrets, alone. But I came here and found myself. I found a family I didn't even know I needed." Marcus nodded. "Funny how it all came together. If you hadn't bumped into me that day, ... If you hadn't made space for us when the odds were stacked against you, ... If your mom hadn't pushed you with her last words." They smiled, sharing the weight of everything unspoken. Fate, grief, chance, it had all converged to bring them here, at the newly restored town square. Zoe, Jaden, and Lily waited beneath the old oak tree, a picnic laid out in the grass. The scene was simple, ordinary, and completely extraordinary, as Eliza looked at the 4 children. Her children now. She felt a profound sense of completeness that had always escaped her. Despite a life filled with wealth and professional success, her mother had spent a lifetime distancing herself from her roots in fear and shame. But Eliza had found herself by doing the opposite, by embracing a family and a community that revealed the true meaning of success. Not power, not money, but clarity, humility, and the courage to make a difference in someone else's life. What would you do if you discovered that your own family had hidden their heritage to escape discrimination? Would you feel betrayed by the secret? Would you understand the choice they had to make to survive? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and if this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. Because stories like this aren't just meant to be heard, they're meant to spark conversation, reflection, and action. This journey of discovery, redemption, and transformation reminds us that true wealth isn't found in what we accumulate, but in what we give, in human connection. In moral courage, Eliza's transformation shows how privilege can insulate us from seeing injustice until personal experience forces us to confront it. The Wilson children remind us that family isn't defined by structure or circumstance, but by love, resilience, and loyalty. And Pinewood's evolution teaches that real change requires more than just money or activism. It takes both. Working hand in hand, we also saw how racial discrimination, often embedded in systems rather than overt actions, can quietly shape lives in painful and lasting ways. These structures are harder to recognize, but just as harmful. Eliza's realization about her mother's past reveals how racism can shape generations through fear, silence, and separation. Only the truth can begin to heal those wounds. So, what injustices exist in your community, hidden in plain sight? Have you ever had an experience that forced you to see the world differently? Share your story below. If this story opened your eyes or touched your heart, help spread the message. Share it with someone who might need a reminder. Change begins when we choose to see clearly, even when the truth is uncomfortable. Thank you for being part of this emotional journey. And remember, in a world that often divides us, the courage to step across boundaries and fight for justice can send ripples far beyond what we ever imagined.